uh, Mayor or the council president, so I guess on that. All right, well, let's, meeting's called to order, let's stand for the.
To the flag of the United States, to the republic which is
Adam Lee,
Randy Thomas, Rob Wood, and Edwards.
Raymond Garrett.
Quinn. We're all here.
So.
First, order of business is going to go with and nomination.
Oh. When?
That it?
Second.
Okay. All in favor of Linda for sure. Okay.
What we did last, oh yeah, I guess, do you remember what happened last year?
I think it's like they don't take notes.
No,
I don't think we have.
okay,
We had a thing, we didn't until the very end, there became some bill or something, some minutes had been certified. And then those minutes, and you guys chose me to be the person the minutes came to, I looked them over, approved it.
Okay. So
I think maybe in that.
anyone would like to nominate someone as the committee secretary? I nominate that. We have a nomination of, is there anyone else who'd like to nominate anyone else? Well, you do need. I'm gonna get you some.
I have it back.
There you go.
I'm take notes on everything.
Actually, aren't you?
it's recorded.
It's a recorder.
All in favor of Adam as the committee budget committee secretary? Say aye. Aye. Any opposed? So at this point, I'm going to hand it over to the budget officer for the presentation.
Okay, take it away. Okay, this is going to be short and sweet. We are still struggling. I say Sharon and Michelle have been wonderful in getting me the information, but there is so much unknown and there was nothing to build on. We are literally having to start from square one. So what I did is I made up some stuff. It's history, but you need to see the patterns. And that's what I'm gonna give you this week. And then I would like to touch some things where I need direction from you guys, because the wastewater budget is going to be really close and the general fund's in trouble. You know, for the two, because I still haven't been able to nail down cash on hand. I'm getting cash on hand because 2024-25 budget, okay, the expenses we got, you'll see it in the we have 6 essentially good months, July through December. January and February are, I've been told that some of the February expenses and income is still not in there. March is essentially non-existent. So I'm essentially working from 6 7 months tops. And there's a lot of income that has not been posted yet, as well as expenses. And some are just gonna be incredible shockers. Okay, what we're starting with first, this is, Rick Cornwall. Notes, and you will have something similar for this when I give you, my thing you guys to consider. They're pretty generic and everything, but there are some things I want to talk to you about, but this is what we're kind of looking at. One, I want to clear up right first, he did the classic tax 50-50. Found a letter from the attorney saying, no, it's 100% before a certain date, and then it's 20% after this date. And so it works out to 14 to the tourist fund and 86 to the general fund. So that's going to be a deviation from what he did, and that's a kind of a big source of income for the city. The sin taxes, with the exception of alcohol, have gone down. People are getting healthier, who knows what. But what really hurting us is going to be the ARPA money we're going to have to pay out. You're either going to pay out and have something to show for it, or we're going to pay it to the government. Either way, it leaves some stuff. Sharon has got some good steps today on how to get in. We were essentially locked out of the ARPA account because Melissa had gotten into it, Krista had gotten into it, and there weren't any other ways into it. But we think we found a workaround, and so we are going to get that done one way or another. Okay. This and personnel expenses is, okay, it should be right after the notes. Okay. Anyway, the way the salaries are broken down, listed by positions and broken down and how they're spread over the accounts. I factored in the $110,000 for the new wastewater guy. And the really just blew us out of the water. These PERS that we pay 100% has increased from 6.96% to 23.2%. You know, that just blew our budget. And so this is proposed personnel expenses 20 fiscal year ending 26, and it's all funds with money in it. And you go to the corner right in the second from the right corner column, you're going to see how it compares to our 24-25. And I'll let you know right now the 24-25 budget, the income wages have exceeded it. So really, this is conservative, and we actually have more expenses in this budget. The audit of the 24-25 is going to be, there are so many things misclassified, and oh, we're out of money in this fund, enough wasn't allocated, so let's stick it under here. And it's a combination of things were totally right, miscommunication with the CPA, just stuff like that. But when you get a new city manager, you're going to have someone with good accounting skills, and they can't delegate it to someone else. They're going to have to be in control of this, because like someone said, we're going to have to be on a Walmart budget, not a Macy's or something like that. But anyway, this is how the figures pencil out. Here's proof, whatever you guys want to call it. The curve is increased, so I'm not just blowing smoke. But what page is that? The orange stripe on it. And then, okay, on the health insurance, there's going to be a 9% increase, and you're kicking on the 1st of January. And I have to budget on an employee with a family because if any employees in or out, we can't be surprised. If someone younger comes in and has kids, and now kids can be insured up till they're 27, so even your older employees can be responsible for kids and increase that up. So this is based on, they said use the current rate, increase by 9%, but in the budget, I use the employee plus family. So husband, wife, kids. And then the vision and the health insurance are together. The dental is a separate policy that the city pays for. So if you guys were to say, well, let's have an employee start picking up by that, and some of the furthers, you're essentially having them take a pay cut. I mean, they haven't had like insurance, but you know, they're gonna be taking a pay cut if they have to contribute to it. And like Linda made the comment, you know, the new city manager should really look around to see if they can find a more reasonable policy, and it just take a call to the insurance agency and say, can you find me something better? You know, and this should have been done a long time ago, but
If I recall, there was, like, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like sometime in the last couple of years, there has been some action on that.
and no follow through.
Well, I think when they got it, it was higher, like every other, you know what I mean? If I recall, right, it was one of the things where we wouldn't look. And then they were like, oh, never mind.
I think, I believe that, they were, this has been talking about having to do this for probably 8 years, 7 years. And they have one that before that. Yeah, they can't. And she says they taxed it to the manager, but it affects them. So somebody has to do it. And Blue Cross Blue Shield is one of the highest ones instead of another policy.
And the thing is, I mean, like I said, when I worked, you know, on the board of the water district, having our manager, because we had the gold. But you could have either the silver or the bronze, it's gonna have a higher copay. The coverage is still the same. The amount that you're paying out is less, but the employee has the higher copay. And so what they developed was a pot for each employee that was $1,500 that they could pull from to reimburse themselves for the copay. Once that $1,500 was gone, then they're going to be responsible. So if you use it a lot, that $1,500 is gone, then they have to pay the copay. If you only use it like twice a year or whatnot, whatever's left of that $1,500 still stays in the water district. So it's not like they get the money. It's just the money is available to assist them with the copay. But again, it dropped the amount that we were paying for the health insurance.
So as far as our health insurance, Cruz County, we're only got one choice. Is that correct?
I don't know.
I think, because when I'm trying to get insurance for a thing. Or a supplement to Medicare.
Yeah, that's for something.
Right. Or insurance.
My
Health
insurance is low.
So what insurance? So you have Blue Cross? What does the city have? What kind of, the city have Blue Cross? City has Blue Cross. And I'm sure there's probably stages, different, you know.
Oh, yeah.
You know, if you have the Cadillac, you know, you can also get, you know, the BMW, or not the BMW, the Volkswagen. You know, that's going to be cheaper. Yes, the copay is going to be higher, but the coverage is usually the same.
Right.
Something that the council needs to
Seriously look at.
start, but you have to let the employees know you're going to make it changes so it doesn't surprise them.
And the thing is, unless it's changed, you can only change on J1.
You can, I know that we go through healthcare.gov to get our. And I recently signed my brother up, and had to mess with his stuff too. And you can change in the middle of the year if there's like an event that's, you know. But I mean, I don't know how it's through for a business.
But you might have to do 6 months because the change usually goes in effect in January.
Yeah.
But this gives us time to maybe shop around. And if we just find it cheaper, since it doesn't pay for it, if we can find a cheaper plan, where, you know, the employee would have something at stake if we met a higher deductible or something like that, the employee would not realize the pay cut. And if they started contributing to it.
But that's why we've always maintained it, that our wages may not be top of the line for other things, but with our benefit. I mean, the medical is almost $3,000, you know, $2,500 non-taxable, plus you add in their 23% PERS, it makes a difference. And I do know the state, the county, North Benton State, for sure, have gone to where the employees take part.
So how many employees do we have in Lakeside now?
Okay, you have 4, you will have, 4 in wastewater. You have, 3 in office, 1 in street. And I think that's the the library do not have health insurance, they're not on our health insurance. So the library is not doing that at all, but they're not our.
But they're in but you pay their PERS.
Something else, you guys are gonna have to correct me on what to do with 8th Street. We either stay the way we are and just, you know, continue to pay the approximately 40,000, it's a little less, on the loan and just maintain it for another year, or you find a use for the building or something like that.
What are they limited to? What can they do and what can't they do?
It isn't not zone residential, it's commercial.
It's commercial.
We still haven't gotten an inspection is what's done. To be able to know, even when the company,
You know,
I can explain a little tiny bit if you want, if you'd like, for the, what I was told, and then, Dave, the building inspector, is going to write, I called him and asked him if he would write something up for me, and he said he would, so I'll remind him. What he told me is the, hot water heater needs to find a home because it was outside, and so it's in, then it needs a home inside. The floor looks wonderful. He said it's really a nice floor. The shingles are not asbestos, so we wouldn't need to do an asbestos.
For that.
Mhm, yeah. And the roof is good now. He's not exactly sure how long that it's gonna be. I don't know how much longer it has, but for right now, it looks good. The windows, there's half vinyl and half the single pane. And so it would have to be the remaining windows would have to be the vinyl windows. But other than that, he said there's not a lot of, it's in pretty good shape. But he's gonna write it up too.
Do you know if there's any testing been done on the other stuff like the mold or lead or, I mean, you mentioned asbestos.
So no, he didn't do any testing. He just walked through and did an observation. We would probably have to, if he wanted to find if there was a lead paint or mold issue, we'd probably contact either like Cascadia Environmental or something like that. They're the ones who do the asbestos testing. But
I know that's, if I recall, that's what the council asked to be done, and was to, all those bases, touch all those bases, so that we know 1,000%.
Expensive, gotcha.
The inside of it. I got some nosy. But, there's a little mold around one of the windows, but you pull back and pull out the rotten board and stuff like that. I looked under the sink, there's no smell, there's no mold visible. I would personally not want to live in it, one where it's located, but you couldn't anyway, because it's not a residence and stuff. I have heard people in the community saying we could make it for like a visitor information center. Staff by volunteers and sell souvenirs and Cheryl at the library, with the directions, whatever it is, said that, there, everybody stops in and asks them, where's this, where's that, and stuff like that. And, I know the business people are not too keen about it being moved to their budget, but, it's an option, and if it was found to be something like that, my suggestion is you can always let the fire department burn it down as a training exercise and get a single wide and set it up as a box. But there's options out there. You guys gotta, not the council, not the budget people. I've got to give instructions, because otherwise the other option is just leave it as it is on the balance sheet. And it is insured. I called the insurance company today to get some figures, but it has a very high deductible because it is not on people. So that's something you guys want to consider. One thing, I'm gonna take a side of it. One thing I came across is the Rick's budget that he set up has the resolution. It was approved by the council or something like that, but the resolution was not finalized. Krista came in and rewrote the resolution and just leave it up. You know, the language, everything. You guys have, but council has to pass that resolution, otherwise during the audit, the auditors are going to come and say, you guys have been spending money illegally, you know. And I gave Nikki Rick's, he had written up the resolution, and I don't know why Krista decided to rewrite it, but I gave her the figures. There was a tiny little math error of $236, but no biggie that you corrected. I corrected it and everything, but that needs to get signed. Bucks.
Okay, that's the one I've been talking about, where you have the budget committee's recommendation and then the council. So you had two budgets, and the resolution is for the budget approved one, not the council approved. And that's the one that 4 times now has gone in front of the council because there's been typos and errors. The same resolution number has been used 3 times, 2 for the budget and 1 for to give her authority to do something or another. And that was 2407. And then there's this one that's 15, where again, the budget price was trying to be corrected. So 4 resolutions trying to get that thing right. And then 5, if you count the one that has the same number, but has anything to do with the budget. So it needs to be cleaned up, but that's something very important. You guys are gonna want to get into it.
This resolution was $510,000
Yes.
approved by the council.
Yes, yeah. That's the one that I keep bringing up and saying it's where the resolution 2415 is for the budget approved instead of the.
Anyway, Nikki has I gave her a copy of Rick's resolution and I rewrote it to make it, I left out all the whereas and stuff like that. And just so the figures are right, you know, and the little math error is, you know, accumulated or retained earnings. It just sounds like it's at $236, but no biggie.
Before you go on about 8th Street, I think Rob had a question and he had a hand up, but something to think about. If we move it to Fund 4, the transit tax one.
No,
5. Therefore, the other one. Okay, 5. Then you can take the expenses out of there and it helps our general fund. Our general fund in front.
big time. But one.
How much time? How much has been big trouble? I mean,
Well,
what
about
we have
$700,000.
so this $700,000 is a negative or a positive that's gonna affect everything? All the budget? Is it
No,
just?
the other budgets are, the wastewater, I think I can get, you know, 0 out. We'll get into something on the wastewater issues, but the general fund is, like it says, I'm going to have to cut expenses like crazy, and you know, things that. You think, okay, we're just gonna have to get by, you know, there's no padding, I mean, like, the city car just sits there. I'm seeing checks going out for $100, $300 for reimbursement of mileage at the federal rate, and the car just sits there, and I see gas for the year, $37. Use the car, you know, that's what it's there for, that's, can save us money. I'm sorry, I'm not here.
Do we have enough things to cut costs to affect really the $700,000?
Okay. I do not have nailed down yet what the beginning cash balance is. That's gonna be very important, so that will reduce that. And it's just, like I said, I was hoping to at least have the other funds for you, but then I got thrown a loop today. And so no, rather than confuse everything, I'm just gonna get these high points so you guys can be thinking about.
But of that 700,000, 300,000 is the ARPA, correct?
Yeah, it's really 400,000, 399, something like that. But, you know, nearly 10,000 was spent on a food container, and we can verify that. And I'm figuring that probably 100,000, those expenses will be paid in this fiscal year. Because like split air and stuff like that, so that would only leave about 300,000 that we have to make for, in this next fiscal year. But I'll tell you, there's a lot of it, there's no business license collected so far. There's no airport fees, there's, you know, all these other things that have not been aggressively pursued. You know, and we can do better.
I know there are some business licenses where people paid. I've had several businesses say to me that I paid and never got my license. Like typically in the year, as you come in, you pay, you get your thing either that day or a couple days later in the mail. I think a lot of people have paid maybe, but
But they have not been registered.
I never got my permit. Like I know a couple of
For this year.
this year.
And it's showing 0 across. That was brought out. Why are we?
I paid like, what was? it,
70.
4 weeks ago?
Yeah, we're getting ready to, they put me on, I was working on that and then they had, we remember like a couple or a week ago, I guess what it was, and said, that wasn't top type or wasn't top priority. And so I got it ready and I'm hoping I told one business owner, I promise I'll get it out this week. I think we're hopefully if we're doing our ARPA training tomorrow and then e-permitting training the next day. And then but I'm promised them that I'll get them out. And the ones I have.
I don't know who knows yet. When did Stephanie?
January 18th or so.
Okay. So, and the fiscal year is July through June, right? I was here and I took several license payments. And in those little yellow receipt books, when we would deposit those checks, it was noted, this is, you know, transient lodging tax, this is sewer, this is whatever it was, business license. Stephanie would then code them and it would appear on the next month's statement under that revenue source. So at least June to December, we should have those numbers or no?
The June through December are the only numbers I feel are pretty solid.
Yes. There should be some license fees in
It
there.
wouldn't be terribly unusual to have little or no business license income in June through December.
Oh, because it's
You would
only
only-
that.
Yeah.
You would only be receiving. Business licenses are they only good for a year?
Mhm.
So you have to come in, so every business year has random, is it progressive? It's not like every June,
It's
Business
just every
license,
January for.
but they all expire. So if I did mine on December 30th, I would have to pay again the next one.
Yep.
Yeah.
That soon.
But you would get a prorated amount. You don't have to pay
Maybe.
the full.
I've never paid it I usually pay $200.
So they're renewable every year.
Mhm.
And all this money that we've accumulated over the years has just been basically it goes into the.
It goes in the general fund.
They say, okay, how much money have we made off of the business? Like, so is it?
There is,
There's a line on it.
But there's been no air.
We just don't have a record of this year, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Just since but I know we've had it. There's been they may have coded it to, because in the community fund, it says permits and license or whatever. So it could have gone into 05 or it could have went into to the general, and that's what we're working on, to finding out. Because general fund has an actual line that says business license. And that is where it says 0. But over here on the 05, there's all this other money, this other permits, and it could have been, or licenses, that line item says licenses and fees or something like that in 05. So it could have been posted to that. So we're working on finding where they were, if they were posted in actually 05 or if they're in the general fund. But they're there, the people have been paying.
Rick, actually, Rick has on his, his comments for the for the budget of last, this current fiscal year. He broke out business license to start tracking it. And before it was just included with, especially other income.
Mhm.
So it's really, this is the first year of tracking it. But, so far nothing's been entered on it, but they're backlogged. And part of the problem is, Krista does the coding, was doing the coding. But what happened is Stephanie was doing it before, she worked from the source document. And then with her, Chris's contract with the new CPA was, the CPA does minimal work, it's coded in-house. And that's where this bottleneck started happening. It just wasn't being processed. And then get into the CPA.
So do these business licenses vary the amounts, or is it a set amount?
Set amount,
So it's
$70.
for everybody.
Mhm.
So how many businesses have business?
I don't know off the top of my head. We got them in a binder and
I know when,
I'm only getting to the back share. Where the accountability of that money, where it's from.
the thing is.
it's in the bank.
When-
It's just the
when
coding.
chamber used to do the inserts, I would come here, I list of businesses. I would have like that. Yeah, there's 90 some odd, businesses that, and some of them are small, some of them are, but some of them are out of the city. So you have to get a business license if you're from Coos Bay and you're gonna be doing, work here. So there is quite a few.
Yeah, the
You know,
list is-
as far as we get at 45 for this year, so.
But about
Do the
that,
math.
that's 70.
that would be some 45.
Yeah, I think
65 or
the
70.
the hard part is the other hard part is when I used to do them myself, we just sent out the letters. So I kept a copy. We had a list of, I had my spreadsheet. And the first one that came in was number 1, no matter who you were. Second one, you're number 2, no matter who you are. What they did when after I left, they started making a spreadsheet and using everybody, you got a new business license number every year. And so now we have spreadsheets with gaps in between. So I don't know what number 3 is, who number 3 is now, because I have to go find, go back 3 years and find, okay, number 3 was Adam's business, and then I have to find that. And so I made new spreadsheets with this so I can hopefully find the people who are missing, the businesses that are missing, and get So it makes it a little harder.
Just my own experience, my number has been the same every year. Like I normally go on the website and pay it, and then, you know, you have to use that number, and it just comes in the mail, and it's the same number.
Right. But cause I did it for 6 years and we just did them. First one came in, that was number
Each
one.
year, so you
Yep.
have a different number each year.
Yep.
So it's all 65 people who.
Well, I don't know because I have gaps in my spreadsheet because I had to make new spreadsheets showing that had when there's gaps now. And but I think, I mean, I have the system figured out. Now I just have to go so I can contact these people who have not paid. And we were working on not knowing like the code, and then we now know what the code what our code is on business licensing, and some of that set back some payments as well.
What codes were we using in years past?
You use a municipal code, you use your business license code.
Something there.
Oh, yeah.
You have to find.
And what our code says is that the city manager has to sign off on them, or city manager / recorder. And so we gathered them and Krista was the city manager was signing off on them. And then because we had some instances in the recent past where people were given business license that probably don't meet the zoning.
I mean, the frustrating part, you all have. We're talking about revenues versus our expenses in and out. And we got a grip on how much money do we actually have that's coming in from our sewer, our business licenses, maybe our Airbnbs considered business license?
No.
So that's a different thing.
No, that's
We don't have-
TLT.
Not enough control of that either. So I mean, our funds are not.
We're working on that though,
Yeah.
because for who? Well, yeah, we are. I didn't say
I didn't
that.
understand that as the question.
I didn't
My
say that.
question?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just looking at the whole idea of our revenue. You know, my own business, I've had a business of 50 some years, and I have, expenses, and I have intake. Is my intake going to give me enough money to be able to take care of my expenses? So I worry that if one of my maintenance people aren't bringing me the money that I rely on to pay my rent, doesn't come in, it's like I got to get a grip on expenses. And that's what's we're done, but it's lost. And we don't, and that's the biggest thing is money part, our intake.
Which we're limited because we do not have a tax base. We're limited in basically special finance, like the transit tax part of it goes into the general fund. The street tax, part of that goes into the street fund. We have all the franchise taxes. Those go into the general fund. So, and they're pretty much set.
Yeah, they're not going up.
Right, they're not gonna go up. If they go up, they're gonna go up very minor. So there's nothing that is going to be changing in regards to our income. It's the expenses that we're really gonna have to look at. Because if of that 700,000, if you look at 300,000 being the ARPA, which right now, most of it is obligated for projects.
And that's what's $700,000 you're talking about.
It's a shortfall I'm looking at, so far for the new budget. The general, can't project yet for this fiscal year, because the information is so skimpy.
It doesn't have a cash carryover. Yeah. So it's just a number right now, but it's a pretty bad.
So Rick projected the city would receive $150,000 in transit bonding tax. Is there any way to know how close you are to that?
I've been asking that question for several weeks, and through all our recent turmoil, I haven't
Because it's paid quarterly, right?
Yeah.
We should have 3/4 on record.
And there's been some change this year that we, instead of collecting it at the city, the state is collecting it for us,
The state is now.
which,
Is
yeah,
that inflation?
which, I mean, I know we agreed to it, I can't answer whether or not it's not.
I don't,
You know what I mean, so it's like, I don't really, I'd love to know where we are.
Yeah, I would too. Like,
So with this money, again, when we're looking at, we have to cut costs down on.
Can I explain, can I have the floor for a few minutes to explain to you guys how I see what's going on here?
Mhm.
Okay. Rick budget, $510,000 carry. Total $783,500, right? Right?
Mhm.
I have it here, let me get it up.
So please do.
Okay, no. This is the page I put, I gave you, as I came in, this is the budgeted total with this fiscal year of our fund.
I just want to go on general fund. Just for a few. Just go.
$783,500.
Total, right?
Yep.
So that means you have $510,000 in your pocket. So then you have to generate enough income to make up $783,500, right? So that, you subtract one from another, and it comes out $273,500. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that means you have to bring in $273,500. So if you go to the requirements page, then you look at the total personnel services and wages, $159,100, right?
Correct.
The total person administrative cost is $276,900. Third column,
217,500.
217,
217.
and that's the one approved by the budget committee.
That's not the total, that's just for the administrative
I
part.
went to total,
The total is 376,600.
376.
Correct.
So then you have to add the debt services to that. Comes out to 413,000 some.
Underneath we have interest loan debt services. Total debt service.
36,900.
Yep.
You add that to the 300, what you say, like, it come out to $413,900 or something like that, right?
I mean, yeah, there.
We'll put your word on, George.
You need for- you say you're- have to get short because you're only bringing in $207,000. Resources, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so then where do you make up the extra? You make it up, taking it from the cafeteria. To make up that 413, added to the $273,000, you make it down to the 413,900. So there is a problem. You want to spend more money than you can bring in. And it's doable, it always has been in the past, because you have a carryover. to Take money from, to make up the. The problem is, if you subtract 415,000 from 510,000. It's gonna come out to about $380,000. I'm adding in, okay, let's go back. So then you go after, on the requirements page, after you look at the total of what you need and what you have to have, you go on down to the capital outlay, $100,000. Contingency, 145, is that what it says?
Yes.
Okay, $25,000. Transfer in, and $100,000. For. And appropriate, comes down to what, $370,000? That's about what you have left out of the cap carryover after you take away enough money to cover the cost for the $415,000, what you want to buy in housing. But not covered by the normal income, ordinary income of $273,000. That's my take on this. I don't know how you guys do. That's how I feel. That's the problem. That's why the city is sooner or later going to have to have some sort of tax.
Probably 11.
Right? Increase it, each state or vote again. Yeah. But somehow or another, get to the city, you have to have a little bit more money, because if you had taxes, you would have to borrow from the cafeteria.
Well, if you keep borrowing from the cafeteria, there is no cafeteria.
There is no
And
cash go.
well, after this year, it's gonna be 380,000, that's capped out vacant contingency and that sort of thing. It's spent every night. Because the contingency, the unappropriated fund and the group. Capped out with the group. Adds up to $380,000, which is what you have left on 510,000. After you take money to bring the income up to what you want to level where you want to spend the money. I don't know if that makes any sense to you guys. This certainly does to me. So in trouble.
Yep.
That's something that the budget committee can consider, and you know, get to the council, but
Your next letter, consider it.
to move if we can move the 8th Street house into tourism.
So look at that fund. It's fund 5. So it's there's a line there that says capital project, $100,000. The total on that is $301,000. So that capital project, I'm not sure what the heck that's for, but in my thinking, that could clearly be used to cover the payments on the property up there. And I totally believe that if we did turn it into a tourist information center that is good for the tourists, I mean, it's something the tourists would, in the long run, the tourists would pay for it. If you put it in that tax instead of the city.
But not only within just the 40,000 making of it, but the insurance, the utilities.
Well, no, I wouldn't go that far. I would let, no, I would not. I would let the city pay the insurance. Just wrap it up in your own city policy.
We may have to split some out because the general fund is 30. And for 1 year, we can bring it out.
Maybe $36,900 for the next 8 years.
Okay, one thing about the tourism fund we have to be careful about is because when Rick made his budget, he put in the tourist fund $75,000 for a grant.
For a grant, yeah. See, and I would ignore it.
Hold on. But he did not back it out in case he didn't get the grant. So really, that fund is overstated.
It is. Of course it is.
Yeah.
Anytime you put a grant line on item on line on the line item for a placeholder, you have to ignore it when you're looking for.
And something else, it's only getting 14% of the transient tax. That whole bunch of money.
Yeah, that's kind of last year, and there was another letter, the letter you shared with us in this packet. It was that letter, and then there was one further letter that continued to talk about it, and I have that, I can get it. And it basically dials it in, I think 14.5%. But we're not ever gonna grab it, you know what I mean? And then Rick budgeted 75. But when it came to the council decided to lower that to 50, and then that other 25 got moved to general fund contingency. That's what.
I saw I didn't see anything where they put anybody out.
Yeah, I don't know if it ever got there. Like I said, it was the budget committee approved 75, and then when it came to the council discussed it and actually reduced that 75 to 50.
Yeah.
That's what I recall from the process.
Show that on the budget.
Well, I'll look at the minutes and.
It's on the left side of the board.
I've got my binder from the budget process from last year, and yeah.
Capital did, and it's not reflected on what the budget shows, and that's what went to the state.
Who knows what, yeah,
You know, again, your resolution hasn't been signed, so. You know, we're just basically spending money, you know,
Yeah, this,
So if you were to lower what you put into Fund 5, okay, by doing a different formula. And if the Fund 5 was a little bit short on what they needed, like they're making payment or something for the transient tourism fund, the general fund could make up some of that money.
not really, because see, when you do, this is budgeted actual, it's a whole different animal.
Like when you do your budget, you can transfer funds, money if you want fund from another. Yeah,
But, see,
as long as you have the money.
okay, when we do the budgeted funds, but when we do actual funds, the actual funds washes out that $75,000. Because it never comes over as income and it never was an expense. So, you know, the next week, I promise, I'll have some good figures for you guys to look at and we can talk about it and everything. But we need to be, you know, it'd be easy, once we can get the figures really narrowed down, then it'll be easier to talk instead of up in the air.
Yeah, that's what I'd rather see, instead of city managers just putting numbers on paper. Here's me like what they've been doing for the last several years.
Yeah. But there's, two other things, on the general fund is scheduled to pay, put $25,000 into Fund 4. Which is the community fund, which handles the E permits. Okay, that's one thing, we're gonna discuss Fund 4 more. But it also, we're gonna put $1 million into Fund 10, which is the wastewater capital account. It can't afford it, and it's wrong figure.
Should not be put in there because that is the federal grant that we got from the federal to build that plant. We should not be mixing city funds with it.
We're doing that to show that we have money set aside.
If you put it in that fund to build the plant, you're gonna use to build the plant.
No. That road would be automatic.
Have to have it in that fund. Saving. Put it in with the federal money to build the plant, you're gonna build it, use the plant. In other words, it needs to be in its own separate fund, it needs to be put back in.
When it's the capital account, the only thing coming out of the capital account is the, okay. Look at the capital, no, I'm going to do it now. This Fund 10 is the wastewater capital account. And from it comes the grant expenses from wire. And, it's going to be close to $300,000 for this fiscal year. The only thing is Oregon Business.
Business Oregon, yeah.
Keep saying it wrong. Reimburses. And so, but they've got to, they get it, they pay it, and then they go to the,
Business Oregon.
I don't know why I've lost it in the other way, and they reimburse us. So, but see, we still are, we're going to, because of inflation, Wire is saying we're going to come up about $2.5 million short. So we're looking at another loan.
Yep.
That's going to be $160,000 for 30 years. There's a schedule further on where you'll see it. And that's going to come out of that fund though, because it's supporting that sewer. That's the only way it can be. The first fund, that the $2.5 million is coming out of the Fund 7, which is the wastewater plant fund, because it went to build the north, whichever way is north,
Sorry.
facility holding tank and everything else like that. They were dumping it into the creek and the nitrates level, they were crazy at low tide. But anyway, what I found where is, and this is, if you count the user, this is configuring it wrong. Okay, look at this one. The way it was, is it was supposed to be a 5 thing and then go up 10% every year. But it's on the base amount. So this calculation shows what it is, and it's, we do it on a fiscal year. That's why I highlighted the fiscal percentage. This, all this other is just, to apply with the computation. But column G, which I have, is the funds the sewer received for the sewer fees, and they jumped from $45, now they're $76. Well, what you do is you take the sewer payment, you multiply it by this percentage, and this is the amount that should be go to Fund 10. Now, okay, in 2025, they did 2024. The fiscal year, they sent over $100,000. And they should have been sending over $389,000. In 2025, British budgeted to send over $1 million. We don't have $1 million, but we should only be sending over $463,000. So, that transfer out, you're going to keep a little over $500,000 of it. So that is going to help the general fund budget. And then 2026, it goes up to 535,000. But that's if we
The
can,
general fund budget,
No, this is the sewer, rate.
and that,
Yes,
I did say general fund. But that's if we increase it. But yeah, you've got to increase it. And right now it's at $76.50. It's at $76 a month. And it should be technically only $72 a month. But down below, this is what the actual rates that they've been doing for the fiscal years, because it goes up August 1st every year. And they've been, like I said, whoever had it had a crazy calculator. And so this bottom portion is just a chunk. But this is what it should actually be. And if someone was to say, you guys said it was only going to be this X amount of dollars, then you're able to show, okay, this X amount of dollars did go over to Fund 10, and it's not some crazy figure down below. And oh, by the way, you're overcharging.
There's an increase, let's see, there is an increase, it's supposed to be August 1st, 2025, it's supposed to be $72. We're paying 76 right
so basically we reached our max
now.
Mhm.
on our 6th year.
Well, yeah, it's gonna be- next year, if they raise it, it's $76.50.
But wasn't the whole system, isn't it the engineers who kind of figure out the rate that it should be in order to be eligible for the grant?
this guy, Steve Donovan Enterprise, he came and did a professional rate study for the city of Lakeside, and that's where those numbers came.
And so the end result was the 10% for 5 years, and bring it up to 70.
Put it in a separate fund, so that the lending agencies could say, oh, yeah, you're capable of saving money. You have money set aside in case you need. In other words, you're not a bad risk because you have money sitting here that you can pay, and you're collecting enough money to pay. That's what it's all about.
But the same fund that 10 that they're sending it to, that is also the fund where the wired grant expenses that are to be reimbursed is coming up. So those should be washed out. So
Well,
money is accumulating.
You need to find out is why are being paid out of the ARPA money that we got to build the plant? leaving. That's why there's only $9 million left in, because it went through engineering fees, DEQ and all the other fees that you have to have, permit fees and everything, and the $2.5 million membrane that we had to manufacture. That's why it's down to $9 million instead of 14.6. I don't believe Dyer GK, and you for the new plant engineering. I think that's all coming out of the ARPA. $14.6 million.
Well, why are you billing the city for this amount?
Well, they're billing the city, but they also do other work for the city.
No,
No,
No, it's okay. I'm just.
Reimbursement. Talking
yes.
Yeah, but see.
So you're saying, you're saying the same.
Mhm.
But
You're
just
describing it.
So we don't account for the ARPA funds on here. You know, Rick put $9 million, and I don't believe it should have been on here. He put $9 million ARPA grant, which we've had for years. It doesn't just show up again, because you know it probably is around, and then he washes it out with a $9 million capital outlay.
Right, because he was imagining best case scenario that we actually start construction of the plant. Start the builds. That's why.
Business oriented,
Business oriented.
but it passes through the city in some way that looks like we're paying and they're reimbursing.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, the whole 14 million went to Business Oregon.
Yeah.
And then we've been paying,
And they
It-
already spent
Or
5 million.
Yeah.
It's reimbursement offsets.
But then the city needs to do what, 2.5 million,
Mhm.
2.4 million for to complete the project?
And Dwyer says 2.5 million, and hopefully the mayor, is gonna get that $1 million. Yeah.
Okay, tell me about that.
So Nikki and I went up to Salem for Capital Day, and we spoke with Boomer Wright about, helping us get some more grant money. So he was going to add it to the docket or whatever and try to work on that. I don't think we've got it update yet. But I know he came down here and looked at the plant and everything.
So that would bring the need down to a 1.1 million that you'd have to get a loan for. If you got a
If we were able to
1.4.
get it. Sure.
There was, remember that thing I showed you where Tom signed off on it? Tom and someone else? And it was, he says, oh, we gotta. That it was.
Oh, it was that we need to do another reimbursement to Business Oregon. That's,
Oh,
that's what that was. Mhm.
But I thought it was, you were invited to apply for this grant, this cover letter.
Oh, I think that that's already been,
It was November.
yeah,
2024.
yeah. And I think that was part of the ARPA fund. I'm not exactly sure. Can't remember,
But you're
but
saying you're hoping to get another $1 million grant?
Discuss with Boomer Wright, but yeah.
See, I gotta know about that, because you gotta put it on the budget and back it out in case you don't do it. Okay.
Yeah.
The thing is, yeah, it could possibly be a pipe dream, but then it could very well then not get it, or at least part of it. And, but if it doesn't show on the budget, you can't spend it. You can't spend it.
let me relate a little bit of information. What help us out. We have 18 years to pay on the north side project. It expires in 24, 18 years. But because we don't have a city manager, and I didn't know, well, actually, I sent city manager an email a month and a half ago, 2 months, I said, you're coming into the budget season. You might want to talk to the state of Oregon, the Corrections Division, and see if they're going to continue making the sewer thing. Because it's a substantial amount coming in the city. And pardon?
$204,000 a year.
So she apparently did not. So I took it upon myself, I'm a city manager and I didn't know who else to do it, so I called. DAS because I thought they were making payments. She said, no, you have to go to correction. So I called correction. He said, we haven't made payments since September 23. So then I called Sarah and asked her if we got any payments. She said, yes. And I said, who did it come from? She said, DSL, Department of State Man. So I called DSL four different times, left messages. Finally, the lady called me back this morning. And she said that they're gonna continue making the payment until the end of 27. And she said that in the very near future, the team, the Department of State Lands team will be contacting the city of Lakeside. And she asked for some official number. I gave her Nikki and Tom's number. And to have, because they're gonna have stakeholder meetings of what that site can be used, what community wants that site to be used for. And in the meantime, they're doing some kind of forest research project up there, but she said there will never be 300 people up there. So but the state is apparently going to go ahead and pay us $200,000 a year.
Through
27.
27.
Process.
So we have 2 years. And again.
Because in 2008, Orville Nelson signed a agency agreement. State of Oregon, direction, it was paid until 2020.
Bless Orville's heart.
Yeah, right on.
Bless it.
That's the information I got today from the lady. And I have her name on my, she emailed me, so I could email her, make the end. And once we get a city manager, then the city manager can be involved in this discussion also. But she said she's gonna have it by invitation only, a group of officials from around the county, or around the county that might have an interest in doing something up there. Like she said, the Housing Fire Department and is looking at doing something up there, and the North Bend School District. There's all kinds of things going on with that you guys don't learn about as soon as they get their ducks.
So we'll, after 27, we may be still
They'll
getting.
negotiate,
some,
they'll
but-
negotiate, they'll negotiate with the city on what they
Right.
should actually be paid.
But it probably won't be.
No, it will not be $200,000 a year, because that's
Right.
based on EDUs that
Right.
took into consideration, there are 300 people out there using. it.
Which means at that point, is when you're working on that budget, the 26-27 budget, the city is gonna have to look at some shortfalls or less funds coming into the wastewater.
Generally.
They'll be talking, city.
Yeah, 27-28.
Sharon, is this $204,000 a set contract price, or has their rates been going up too?
No, well,
Mm,
yeah. they should be.
Yeah, it did go up because when I was doing I think when I was here, it's like 16,800 and now it's 17,084 or something like that.
That 10% increase applied to them. too,
It
but-
did go up. It didn't the first couple years, but it did go up recently. There must have been some negotiation in the past 3 years.
What?
There must have been some negotiation in the past 3 years because when I left, it was like 16,800 or something, and now it's 17,000. Well, I know, but
My knowledge.
well, it just wasn't done. Nobody in those few years then,
what
I
it
mean,
me is the city.
mhm.
So you better be setting aside some money in case there's a big major fix that needs to be done on that pipeline.
Well, their contracted amount was like the 16,800 and then in the beginning. And then it went up, but I don't know at what point. But it didn't go up the first few
Well, they-
years. Mhm. Mhm.
And that's enough, and that's an amount of money, I'm just keeping in perspective, that's an amount. Approximately twice what we bring in on TLC. So
No, it constitutes about a quarter of our total. Part of our budget.
And the thing is if you look at it in the general fund, it is, the wastewater is subsidizing a lot of salaries.
Mhm.
So if we didn't have that money coming in, y'all would be working for free.
I don't know, mine, I don't know, I'm sure what
I mean,
mine is.
wastewater is really-
Mhm. It was in the budget message, last year's budget message. Oh.
For 2024.
I don't know if they do either because it said like they paid 110 and it like, there's like, that it should be 100% and now it's 110%, so.
Anybody here?
Read at 40%.
All right, I'm done.
We're running that to the ground.
Mhm.
I think this is really takes the joy off my mind because
Yeah, well, it keep my mind too, because I thought they were gonna. They do their end to buy net, their budget right now. So I just had this feeling that they were going to be looking at that, keep that, we certainly have, but they're just not there.
Just impressed that you guys are taking it right out of your mind into those numbers. Coming off those books.
But-
I said, I'm just impressed that it's coming out of your, you remember all these
okay, the thing about the city of financing, it's sort of the only number one that the wastewater plant is paying on the work side. They are currently paying close to $160,000 a year. Using their figures, Krista figured it was gonna be like, the interest rate was gonna be about 4.22%. This budget shows, is based on, this is looking back, estimating it based on 2%. But when I did an amortization of $2.5 million using 4.22%, I came up with almost $160,000. So anyway, that's what I'm gonna plug into that fund one, just a placeholder in case they need the loan. If we get the grant, the loan will be a lot less than it reflect that. It's been a long day.
Yeah, she's here before we get here, so. So that's, I mean, yeah, she's, yeah, right along with us employees. So she's been doing great.
The other thing I want to talk to you guys about is Fund 4 is a community. That's where the email committee is from. And it's my understanding Melissa set that up.
Mhm.
And it's been subsidized by the general fund. That's where $25,000 was supposed to go to it again this year. Talking with Sharon, Kristen formed out her responsibility as a planning officer to Elcott.
Yeah.
And so we are receiving legal bills from Elcott, engineering bills, and then the little bit of the permit. Or the inspector, the inspector thing, which is also contracted out, and we don't have the capability, so that is a valid expense for the inspector. But it's right now, the LCOG's going to hit $15,000. And they only 10 was budgeted. That is money that should have never been spent because the city manager as a planning person, which was she was hired to do, should be the one signing those things. And of the fees, we are only entitled to 10%.
Business
It's
license.
silly having a fund that can't support itself. And what I would like to do is suck it back into the general fund. Any monies would go into that. And then, yeah, new manager has a good accounting basis. Watch the budget like a hawk and has planning skills. Because they're going to have to keep a track on this. But I would set up in the general account line items. You might have a little bit of illegal, so a little bit of legal e-permit, engineering e-permit, because on the planning commission, if they have to hire an engineer to do it, the one applying for permit is supposed to pay the extra cost. And so the city's not out any money. And then it's supposed to be high enough for the inspector to cover the inspector's fee plus our little 10%. Okay, I want to make sure I've got this down thing. And so, to right off the top, we're saving money there. And by not having another fund, what I just do is leave it zero. And it would carry over for 3 years and then it will drop off. But if we get going, great on these, it'll be so easy to pull over. But right now, it cannot support any percentage of a employee, wages, especially at these ridiculous PERS and health insurance. But that is something I would like to do.
She originally said that. It was paying for me as a part-time employee with no benefits. And there was income going into that fund every time somebody paid for planning permit. Those have dropped off a lot. But previous to that, all those things were in the general. There's no reason we can't do them.
No, he said
no
there's no
reason.
reason. Yes. And with background, his background, it makes sense. Sharon, I talked to the word Sharon, and they're in a position too where legal fees are higher than they anticipated. And wasn't that legal fees part of the 10,000? No, it had to be
I
separate.
want to say something too. It's my understanding that when LCOG bills us for legal fees, it's just, here's a dollar amount for legal fees. And the legal fees that were budgeted in the community development fund are supposed to be legal fees related to those activities. And I think what's happening is the bill for LCOG for all legal work is being charged off there.
Those are itemized.
City attorney is also criminal.
She did show me a bill from the planning thing. LCOG's fee, engineering fee, were separately stated. And, but they are not being pulled together. So it looks like, legal must be planning. I agree with you there because I've seen very little
Right.
legal fees on the general.
So every time the council or the city manager or whoever asks Gary for a legal opinion, it goes on that legal bill. It's not itemized. You have no idea what goes where.
Has the city requested an itemized?
Well, it's semi itemized because they say like he'll write some, Gary or the LCOG will put something down and like 2.5 hours. So they describe it.
For in the city.
So that's why we wanted it to go back into just the general fund. Because it's definitely not supporting itself with these and the fees that not, and the legal fees have to go to, I mean, they come out of the general fund either way, I guess, and, because we don't even, I don't even think the planning had a legal fee. Line, right.
Services and professional.
Yeah, it doesn't even have a legal fees line
Is
item
anyone
in the
involved?
budget.
Let's see, I would set up line item.
Parts of it, I think.
And from contracted services, there was a CPA fee being run out of and, you know, a bunch of other little contract fees. That should have always been on a separate line. Legal, it should be on a separate line. Audit fees, legal and audit fees are already on a separate line. But Chris made the statement during one meeting when the attorney wanted to do training to the council. Oh, well, we don't have money for that, but we can bury it under contract services because there's money there. No, you know, it had its own line.
Mhm.
And if you're doing a budget, if you can't see actually how much legal fees you pay because they're buried somewhere else, you're gonna come up short, and it just makes it harder. So, you know, I suppose you guys, you know, but just the way my mind thinks, and the logic is that, okay, we'll have two legal fees. One will be identified as e-committee or e-committee. It should be minimal if the city manager does his or her job. And then the other, the true legal fees for council meetings, advice and stuff like that. Okay,
The attorney then would have to separate their bills, so fee permitting or.
yeah, but see, it should be minimal because the manager can sign off on it.
Why is the attorney involved in e-permitting?
Because Krista abdicated her responsibilities, farmed it out.
E-permitting is nothing to building permit.
Someone has to sign.
Somebody has to sign off on it.
Yeah, what was happening?
And you're online out there, now who can sign off?
Well, this is what happened is that every building permit has a line, has a section on it that there's planning, there's fire, and there's public works. So each one of the departments has to sign off on that. So there was no planning department. And so Krista had LCOG sign every permit. And what they would do in the LCOG is they would double check to see if it was floodway, floodplain, wetlands, all those things, and then they would sign it, or that the setbacks were met, and all those things. Rob, you know, how everything that needs to be checked, and so that's every application, building, electrical, all of them were sent to Henry for review.
What about a piece of land? They want to build a house, or they want to put a modular home. Do they come to the planning commission to? They don't. So they come to the city to get a building permit. So the city can't tell them whether they can build on a certain lot. That's what we're bringing in.
That's why we will want, you have to be cognizant of that when getting a new city manager, because that's who is going to, unless you have the part-time planner that knows those things. But I mean, like right now, if somebody came and told me, yeah, I could tell you what you can do on that land. But we need somebody that will know how to do that. Yes, we're supposed to know it right off. We're not supposed to have to send it off to somebody else to sign.
In the past, we have got. Charlie did. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Kurt did.
Depending on that person's experience and expertise, they may not have the ability to do that. Chances are they're not.
They made a lot of mistakes.
Sure.
But kind of pay good money for it, get your money's worth.
They're $115 an hour. Do you work? Yeah. So see, it's like, yeah,
That's it.
I want to address the other thing. One. Water fund. Is it true that the city is paying somebody $2,500 a month that lives in somewhere in Central Oregon to come over here and do the sign off on the water? Keeper?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, I talked to.
$2,500 a month, travel 175 miles to come over here.
I think it's closer to $2,200 a month. He's from Crescent.
Yeah.
And something comes up, he has, during the winter, a hard time getting over here. And, the Bob Dillard.
Yeah.
Food Bay or something like that. He's willing to take us on as a client again, and he would be a lot more reasonable, and he would be available. Now, if you get a wastewater supervisor qualified who can do the signing off, you know, but then you're looking at $2,200 versus $110,000 divided by 12 months. But you're also getting a fourth person, and the wastewater people say we really need a fourth body, a working fourth body, you know, with rotation. Now, my mind says, why not we can hire another employee, but like a grade 2 or even a 1, and then be cheaper, you'd have your fourth body and use Bob Dillard. But that's something else for you guys to consider. And then we have heard the 23% plus medical.
The buyer charged me $400 a month when he last did it. And he's willing to do it again. And I just can't, I just cannot believe that they hired somebody from Crescent to drive over here for $2,200 a month to do what Bob Dillard could do for $400 or $500. I just cannot believe it.
And how would he be here for $22?
No, it's just, it's a monthly thing that he has to sign off with the state, because we don't have a qualified, for free.
That's three.
Put a signature on.
Right.
That's all he does. Come over, sign on the DEQ form,
Yeah.
and then doctor says you're applying.
Again, if you're paying someone $450 for a signature as opposed to $2,200 for a signature, that's it.
That,
You're doing, that's what you're paying for. So again, what the heck?
the other thing is, mowing the airport, summertime. Buddy would like to go back to that. Why should you pay somebody $10,000 a year to mow them, buddy? They did it for 16 years without any problem. And then all of a sudden somebody said, oh, we should have a contract, we should get $10,000 a year. Another $10,000 out the window.
How much is Buddy charging?
Well,
He gets paid, that's his part of his daily job.
So I bought $109 tractor for him.
Yeah, and the thing is, the tractor only takes, the tractor they have now, they can mow it in a day as opposed to 3 days. So it's just 1 day's work of, you know, that's because I see them. My backyard overlooks.
at one point, there was some mismatch between the tractor, maybe it was too big or it didn't have the right attachments for the mower that we had. Something, at some point, there was some reason, I don't remember exactly what it was, why the tractor and the mower. You know what I mean, why I went there, I don't remember why or what. And then there was discussion about like, you know, under contract, you have a guy who's coming to mow it whether he needs it or not, because there's a contract.
And he get it on more.
But
Yeah.
you're looking at $10,000 to mow the
No,
airport.
I get
You
it.
can only mow the airport like from June until September. That's $10,000 for 4 months.
And the guy is one of the, I mean, whatever, I mean, he's one of the renters over there. So he's like, this is awesome.
You're just nickel-and-diming yourself.
And I mean, we talk about mowing grass, we spend $600 a month to mow grass at Wolf Beach. Where, you know, I feel like just amongst the people I know, and you guys know some people, we could probably figure out a way to get that half-acre grass mowed for less than $610, or $650. Yeah.
Well, you're supposed to, what, do it with pruning too and everything?
I don't see it.
No,
I would, and you and I had this conversation, I would much prefer us, like, as a community, take on the cost of mowing grass and reinvest that funds into like fertilizer and some tree trimming and, you know, some things that actually make the place look nice. Get those sprinklers going. And I had a talk with, Mater about what it would take to get the sprinklers, because we had been having that discussion. He goes, you just gotta talk to county into turning it on. And it's like, that's it? You know, like,
There's a valve there. isn't there?
yeah, can we turn on the sprinklers and have some grass so we won't pay the guy $600 in the summer? Because in June, we know the grass is this big and it's nothing. Let's have something beautiful to mow. Let's make it smell good. You know,
County owns that part. The city was never supposed to maintain. That was part of the purpose of robbing the enterprise fund to pay for it with the county. And it was agreed that the city would not be maintaining.
the county will not maintain it. And so we either have a ugly looking waterfront piece of property that's not suitable or anything, or else we maintain it. But see, I was thinking, you know, if we can get it done in-house and then maybe on the tourism budget, try to solicit donations for this, for the, you know, I talked to Adam about this, but I came from Bend, Oregon, and they have a big amphitheater. And every year, businesses bid to get their name put on the amphitheater for the thing. The Wolfie people will not subsidize the thing anymore because it's, you know, yeah, exactly. So maybe a business or two and everything can, you know, say, hey.
Maintaining ourselves, breathing.
Yeah, I think that, I agree. It's just something kind of fun like that, you know, but starting to soliciting donations that way. And then we do it in-house.
and I'm not opposed to changing the name. I would just have to refer to some of you folks that were around when the park went up and go, how offended are they gonna be?
Yeah, he passed. Yeah.
And the family will pay.
Yeah, the family's not living, so that was why it was called Washington, you know, Woolly Beach, is because
I tell you,
people are
stories
donating
sometimes.
the.
So my dream, you know, and this is an idea I shared with Peggy. My dream that we could take better responsibility for it over the next 2 or 3 years, make it look nice, do some things, and then have some standing to go back to the Wolfenstein family and say, hey, look, we appreciate the initial investment. We've appreciated your help for years. We know it kind of went fine. Look, we turned it into something nice. Maybe you're proud to have your family name on it again. Maybe, you know, maybe, you know what I mean? And it's like, maybe, is there, you know, do you guys think we have that chance of renewing that? Or is that just dead and we need to be looking for other? I'd have to lean on those folks who know that
Woofy
situation.
Beach have to be named Woofy Beach.
I don't know if we have some kind of agreement. I don't know.
Name it that after Ray Wolf. Yeah. Put up the money to buy the
Palm
palm
trees.
trees and the sand.
Sand's pretty cheap around here.
Shut it.
That's like it.
$780, whatever, $800, whatever it is. For maintenance for Wolfie Beach, if we can do it in-house, probably for a heck of a fee.
Be under contract with him?
Yes.
So.
Yes.
Anytime you want, say we have.
No, I think they were signed, weren't they signed in January or July or,
So just 1 year contract?
I believe so, because he recently, I mean, the last thing I remember is that he had a rate increase from original, and that was maybe last year, maybe the year before. I'm not, I'd have to look, but I just remember watching it, watching when he asked for more money.
So we don't want to budget, so we don't. we didn't- Until it's been,
Yes.
reviewed by the board and stuff like that, and see if there's not a cheaper option.
So if you're gonna slash it, but should you keep a little bit besides the donation
Yeah,
line, that's a little bit.
The miscellaneous stuff, like maybe you want to plant something or something like that. But I don't know.
It's fertilizer.
Well, you always have a candy bottle.
Well,
Tree.
they were supposed to, the part of what we were supposed to have was they have special, like stakes or whatever that you're supposed to put in for the palm trees, and there was supposed to be a palm tree expert who kept them nice. Also, that's what originally they were, Andrew was contracting for, was to get things healthy down there again. And then it came to, but
And this is a water tank.
And then also I'm going to, on the budget, tourism budget, I was going to put a line in for fireworks donation. The council approved only 35,000 this year, and the citizens are gonna have to take up the slack if they want their pretty fireworks show. If there is any additional requirements, Sharon got a good deal with better than, it's not free, but a better deal than they were first presenting for the barge. So, but you see, you have to create an income line because you just can't get it without spending to be able to spend it.
And then I know last year the LBO and the women's club were able to collect $3,500 or something like that, and they have every intention of doing that again this year.
Yeah.
And there was some talk at the last meeting about go ahead and getting collection bins out around town to start that,
That years, and they do it all year.
That's our sign on the road. Says, home of the fireworks, it's on 101. There's a sign
Oh, that
there.
wooden sign. I think that whole thing was falling apart. And
And so that part where it said, the
Fireworks.
fireworks, July, whatever, and it was just rotten. Actually, someone tried to rip it off.
well, so I can
Dennis had it.
I can hope that we'll bring in that same 3,500, maybe $5,000 if we try real hard, between now and then. And then they keep trying to talk me and the mayor into getting in a dunk tank. So there's quite a few people around here wouldn't mind dunking being the mayor.
Donation thing, you're around for it.
Yeah.
There was no yellow, with the ton thing, right? That was my option.
I mean, there's bins that decorated,
All year
fireworks
long.
and that, it's all year long. And also, and then during the fireworks,
this
I
year,
remember Shelley and I, well, and a couple other, but we went with the booths, we actually went this way. We had to see who could, collect the most money, and we collected almost $1,200.
And then
And that's been my hope is that, last year, I think it was the women's club and some people from the LBO did it. I feel like in a perfect world, we can get our fire department to come down there and, people, when they see a firefighter. No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong there. Well, maybe we can borrow some boots and a jacket or two or something.
We just, we went to, Osprey, went to County Park and we had, these, the prison glasses that you could wear. And so, they could, for $2, whatever they donated, in the items.
I know
They
you're
were thrilled with that.
years ago, how many years ago, the chamber used to raise the money, 10,000. And then Shelley used to be so creative and got less sanitation to we supply a dumpster and then we pay for a dumpster.
They still do all that.
We had to do a barge, we got our barge for free, and then the rooms at the lodge.
That's what they, the guys.
So now
set up.
Yeah.
paying for a barge, how much do it?
600.
In the scheme of things, that's not a huge amount,
And like people say that they went from 10,000 to 15 and they would pay the additional 5,000.
TLA.
TLA wanted to do bigger fireworks, and so the city at that point, was.
all in the past.
In the past,
Okay,
yeah.
now.
In the last 10 years.
Okay.
So they wanted to, so the city would do 10,000 and they subsidized another 5,000.
That's very right, you said.
Yeah.
Like Chuck McCain used to donate a lot. Does that still, the McCain's Foundation, do they still donate or?
They would if we asked.
Donated to the OVO sponsorship a couple different times in the last couple of years. And I have a relationship with the current CEO guy. And, if we ask him, especially if when we give him some naming or something.
That's just it, if you have contacts, and you ask in most cases, they will. I mean, Shelley had contact she was the one who kind of did that. So. But yeah, I mean, she could get people to. She was really good at it. She really was.
I think people just stop asking. And then,
I think so.
And the
too.
bill has tripled. You guys are talking about a scenario when it was $10,000, now the current is a $35,000, you know what I mean? And that's a whole task, one or two people to raise that.
Probably $1,000 worth of fireworks and $5,000 for ancillary costs.
Sure.
So, and see, that's just it, is when you're budgeting for the fireworks, the total package. So there's this much for, the guys, the barge, all the other stuff, and then there's this for the fireworks. Have you paid for the fireworks for this year?
The only thing that I know of is that we've given them 7,500. And there's going to be another one shortly for 7,500.
I can't think of the order of the thing.
Yeah, and then there's one after the July 4th. There's going to be a 7,500.
Yeah, because I remember in the past, we would make a payment in December, and then we would make the final payment. In the fireworks in July.
But yeah, I just double checked with them just the other day, not very long ago, just to make sure they got the 7,500 that we were sending them. And then she explained that there was going to be 2 more payments after that. And I don't know what came before. It wasn't my part. Yeah, that's true.
We get some fireworks. You just go back to having one guy individually light each fuse. It takes about 5 minutes between each firework, but we've done it.
If we weren't a city, I know a guy. Unfortunately, we're a city. And why?
I remember a time. There would be each firework going.
Okay, real quickly, because long time, got the piece contract from the library, and because I'm wondering, should we be allocating like insurance and CPA fees and everything else like that? And I do believe we should be allocating a little bit of the CPA fees, a little bit of the audit fees. Because one, they're 9 employees versus our 8, so yeah, a little bit of CPA's basic fees, a little bit of the audit fees, because they are audited when the audit's done. But I was thinking insurance, well, it doesn't really allow for insurance, but it does allow a little bit for utilities, and I was gonna do it based on square footage.
Have those guys raised their prices?
No, she's talking about the library.
Yeah. It's just, maybe a little bit in the general fund, but I don't wanna hurt them, and I wanna stay within their contract. That's why I put,
And she did mention that they haven't been receiving a phone bill.
No, they don't get the phone bill, but they're allocated phone things, and that falls under utilities, so she was questioning, is that right or not? And, yeah, it's kind of. So, I don't know about the math, I've gotta see what the total phone bill is now. Okay, now the next thing is for each one, it's a historical data, it's like 4 or 5 years, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. The first 3 years are actual, the yellow is the best I could get for 23, 24, because with the audit not completed, we don't, if the auditors make changes, we don't have the final figures. There's a pretty good ballpark, and then the last one is the adopted budget for 24, 25. And he said, what really giving us me this old stuff, we would not believe how many times I've looked back, what is the trend? What is the trend? So for each fund, here's some historical data. And that's it. Now, the same time, when I actually do the thing, is there anything anybody really objects to? Or should I go ahead and proceed this way? The main thing is eliminating that one fund and moving it over. But is that a pretty good consensus? Because if you're against it, I can always leave it and spend out time allocating stuff to it and wondering how we're gonna fund it and stuff like on one side, as you can see. So in any feedback, any direction you guys want me to go, because that way, if I can do it, then it'll be just some general tweaking, hopefully next week. But if we need to do more of that, I would be helpful to know. And you can always get back to me later, I'm not asking for a solid thing. But like I said, right now, I have no option on the 8th Street house, but we leave it as it is in the budget. And so that was a big.
The one, we were going to maybe move the fireworks or the franchise fee back to general to street. So that, because Dennis has been paying the utilities out of.
Lights, we're talking about the lights. The fireworks are in tourism, and I said 8th Street, I really meant 4, not 8th. The fireworks are in tourism, and that's where it stays because that's.
Not the street lights.
But what happened is, on the central Lincoln PUD franchise fees, a portion was allocated to, Dennis's fund to pay for the street lights. It's gone up, next year is gonna be close to $39,000-$40,000. It's coming out of his budget with no income offsetting that. Dennis's budget can survive paying that, but the general fund can't afford to lose. And matter of fact, but the fee that's paying it, he would only be getting like maybe $29,000. We were split 50-50 between general fund and his fund. And it still wouldn't be enough to pay for the lights. But I'm sorry, disappointed, but that general fund is desperate.
But if you're going to possibly absorb the community into the general fund, would that help the?
I think he's on the right track. I think Dennis can, he don't like it, I mean, he's mad at it, I'll raise it about it, but he can absorb the street lights into the budget. Years ago, for years, it was 50-50.
Yeah, so I mean, because this amount,
But you're saying,
you're not gonna have this because someone else in the office is gonna be.
But see, that is office people, it's gonna be moved back into the office.
Right.
So, and the income from it, it's so heavily subsidized by the general fund. It's just gonna make it simpler. It's not really gonna input that much money. Okay. But like I said, if the city manager is forced to step up and do a job, his or her job, he can save right off the top $15,000 in legal.
the 8th Street count into the tourism fund and saving the general fund 39,000.
Is a possibility the tourism fund though could only support it for a couple of years.
That's not it, I mean, we've been putting more than the 14%. If we drop it to 14%, we may be able to carry it for a year or two. But at some point, if we're not adding, we're not.
Right.
Yeah, I think there's 140,000 cash carryover.
It was right in that area.
So, but, and if you're looking at taking 40,000 for 8th Street, 40,000 for fireworks, that's 80,000.
So fireworks is already in tourism.
That's what I'm saying, but again, if you're spending, you're spending 40,000 for 8th Street, 40,000 for fireworks, that's at least 80,000 a year out of, and then if you're only putting in maybe
It's just
40,000.
You know, last year we did
Right.
10 towards events, and now we're at 90,000. No, I get it.
I just want to get through this next year with the
Right.
debt.
Yeah, you know, if you're looking at the idea, the potential of a temporary reprieve, because, you know, yeah, but again, general fund spending.
Just an observation, you can't pay for that building out of the tourism fund unless and until the decision's been made to transition its use in that direction. And that hasn't happened.
But if she's doing the budget, maybe at the next council meeting, and the draft.
Well, you're presupposing which direction the council would go.
Well, that's why I have to leave it as it is until the council makes the decision. But if it's converted to a tourist thing, then it would legally qualify then. But like I said, that is something that it's a no-brainer. I can't do anything. I can't even propose it to the council.
So the money that we're spending more than we're bringing in.
Mhm.
So that means that the products that we have coming in, we have to raise those up. Like business licenses.
I don't think so. You're pretty well maxed out and you can't buy it.
We have to cut expenses.
Yeah, because aren't we limited on the fees and permit fees and stuff we charge?
We're limited on like conditional use permits and planning fees. We're limited because you can't make a profit on those. You have to justify. But the other ones can raise.
Look at. Take the rentals. Whole year,
Yeah.
$1,500.
You should see what we pay insurance on that.
Well, that's what
airport.
And it comes up every year, this discussion, you know, I mean,
Yeah,
they
I agree.
want, they want less rent or more, that, you know, that we got a request recently for to spend more money. And I can't help but think, it's like, I'm sorry, you guys just don't have any pool, we don't make enough off of it to even justify it being a functional airport.
They can try that, you know, you're at a place to put your plane on grass, but the cost of business, it is, to me, it is a atrocity of us to even consider that these guys have this for $1,500 a year. And their comment was at the time, well, if we have to, you know, we pay our taxes, blah, blah, blah. And if we don't like.
Not very much,
We're gonna
yeah.
we're just gonna take our planes to go somewhere else. I mean, that's, I pray to God,
Cause if it
a
was,
miracle would happen and everything could come down. Just let them go.
and then it's, I mean, I know there's this historical value and we never want to lose that completely. But if in this super tight crunch, that is not a functioning airport for a minute. And we, you know, you said we pay insurance on it because it's an airport. Where does that put us? You know, how much is that here?
But the fear,
It's like
Adam,
That's what I'm saying. What does that insurance cost us a year? Do we know?
The insurance, I got the figures, I got to contact the insurance company today and got the figures. And then, but I have to find out, most of the policies expire July or September of this year. And I don't know what the increase is gonna be, but it is broken out for the aircraft.
Is it 1,000 a year? Is it 10,000 a year?
I got got so many.
You know, it used to be a few.
So $3,000 or so.
Yeah,
The city
About
has-
$1,500 a year for the all that land in the airport.
Was that Mike?
The city hasn't owned the airport that long. They bought it for $1.
2006.
But the fear that they're giving us is if, you know, we leave, it goes back to the owners of the part, or it goes back to the state.
I've heard this, but I've never seen anything.
I'm thinking,
No, they would, if they leave, they would sell their hangar. The next person, you would charge them what you want and then be. Right.
And that's all beside the point. It's a functioning part of our wastewater treatment.
Mm.
We can't not have it. You know, believe me, since I moved here, I've been looking at that going, how can we better use that? And even up until a year ago, I had this dream in my head that, you know, if the sprinkler system only covers a part of it, then maybe we, could, you know, do it. But I've looked at some photos and things of where the sprinklers are in the summer, you can kind of see. And it's 80% of the, you know, it covers the whole thing
They're
on that.
not friendly. They're not friendly. I would talk to them in a group and they're not friendly. They say we will turn you into the state EPA for all the stuff, our airplanes and this. So to me, the only reason we're not doing it is that one, we're just tired of listening to all this stuff, or take it upon them and call them on it.
Exactly, they're
Call
cool,
them
call
on
their
it.
bluff, and they said, well, we're gonna move, fine, that's, I will move in.
Someone else will want it.
Yeah.
I have no doubts that that space could be filled by another recreational group.
Yep.
In this community.
I'm here.
They're currently asking for $10,000 extra on spending on some radio communication stuff. And
Oh,
last
yeah.
year it was in the budget to spend a bunch of money on a new rainbird sprinkler system deal. You know what I mean? It was just like, how much of this is required for our wastewater? And then how much of this expense is being incurred because it's an airport?
The wastewater had a valid thing for the spring. Because they have to do so many. And you talk to Buddy, you'll listen for an hour, but they have to do so many. So much, yeah,
Well, maybe once we get the new sewer plant built, not having that water go down into the grass.
It's got it, it's part of it. I brought that up. I thought too that the new system might not require it and the new system totally requires
I just think we wagging the tail is the air.
but they're all.
You know, we did not even have airport committee until 2019.
it. And since then, they've been here 3 times.
Mm.
Argued about.
A long time ago, we could say 30,000.
What?
If we do the new sewer
Oh,
plant,
yeah, and by the way,
yeah,
Yeah.
so when is the new sewer plant supposed to be finished?
well, I thought they were gonna do it this month, and then I heard today, Buddy told me that he might start it in July. Right? Somebody needs to get everything involved.
Well, because didn't they say he recently say something in the city council meeting?
They said not in May.
Well, originally it was gonna be April, but then I thought that he said it
Said
got
May.
pushed back a little bit or something. Just recently, Aaron spoke at the city council meeting.
Okay,
I have one more question.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Peggy, you have on here, when I'm looking at the transit tourism tax coming in, 2021, 68, 2022, 123, which is a huge leap. And then for the following 2 years, it's showing nearly nothing. And I guess I'm just asking, is it possible to find out like where we are?
On the TLT?
Yeah, how much we've collected, what we project to collect, because we got a lot of our, summer, spring season should be some of our more collecting months. I just like, we're making decisions, a lot of this is based on TLT income and we don't have any clue where we stand.
Yeah,
I think because these numbers, which Peggy has available to her, isn't telling us anything for the last 2 years.
Is that being done by the state now?
it has not been done. The city council just approved that it goes to the state, that the state collects. Probably a month or so ago, there was that, I would check my minutes, but I know that it was just fairly recent that it was approved. But didn't they just do it recently too? Didn't you guys just approve it recently? Okay, recently. Okay, good. Well, okay, so I wasn't here the first time, but just remember sitting here and it being approved by the city council fairly recently. And then I don't know if, well, I'll have to contact the state, and I don't know if Krista did. She may have. So I was going to contact whoever I need to contact to see whether or not it's been started. I just don't know.
Yeah, I'd love to know where we stand, we estimated 95, I think, what it's saying there in the last row. And, at this point, we should have collected at least half and expect the other half to come in between last week and June.
Well, it is quarterly.
Don has a question. So Peggy, on the first, has anybody inquired why the leap of such a percentage from 7 or from where they were under 10% up to 23? Has that been drilled down on why? Most of the other increases are a few percent with the exception that they renewed for it. Do you have the ability? I would imagine that you have not, but can a call be placed? Like, what is the reasoning for this huge increase for this town city, and others have just a 1 or 2 or 3, 4%?
I know.
I can't bring that on the city. Like the last moment, that must have noticed, it must have been out for months, but it was never brought to the council's attention.
No, I discovered this in probably just,
in October 24.
well, I discovered it. I was making a phone call to PERS and then I found that. And this thing, so I called PERS and asked them why. And what they said was that there were some cities that were given a break. And they had the reduced rates for years, and then they were now, like the contract had ended or something like that, and so it was going up to, yeah, so that's what they told me.
12 or 20. So there are a lot of other cities up above there. Yeah. And I was looking too, their increase.
And she didn't have an answer to why it was that the 7% and what exactly why, but she's just said that there was the cities that were given a break, and now those breaks have expired. That's what she said. And so it was jumping up. That's what I thought, because it's like, oh my, I couldn't believe it. And immediately I did bring it to the city manager's attention, and then and it was going to be discussed like with Peggy, the same thing, and we researched it, Peggy and I did, and that's what we came up with.
Hey, have you found anything on the Zipley franchise fee? Well, there was I know going back to Melissa's time, there was some sort of agreement with Zipley made, and then more recently, under Krista, it was a debate on whether or not we even had an agreement with Italy. It was determined that we did, but she told us they hadn't been paying it.
They paid.
And then I look here and I'm not seeing, I'm seeing several other transients in your planning, but I'm not seeing Ziply as one of those. I'm wondering if that needs to be a line that we need to add and pay attention to.
Do they have separate lines for the?
Yeah,
or
several of
zip-
them do. It says COPD and trash and.
Just be a cable franchise.
Or is it just, I
Is
mean,
that what they're calling it? Well, I mean, because there is another cable company as well. And I would assume both would need to pay.
Zippy used to be Frontier before that, Verizon. And then Zippy bought it all out. So
What is the other major carrier in town besides it? You don't have it. So we need to see if we're getting paid for Spectrum and Ziply.
and we've got some from Dipley. I've seen the checks.
Okay, it's how once a year it's like.
Well, I've only seen a couple checks. I don't know how often they pay, but it's supposed to be franchise fees are usually, well, at least the Central Lincoln PUD, we get several.
Okay, that's why I didn't know if it was a one.
I think it's probably they probably do some sort of a percentage every quarter or something as well.
Okay.
Okay, are we pretty much?
Exhausted.
Number 7 is, so our next meeting will be the 28th. At 6 p.m. According to the budget calendar, the third meeting, if we need it, will be May 5th. So that's the one that will need to be scheduled.
Okay, so you want it on May 5th?
May 5th, at 6 p.m.
That'll be the public hearing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, if we get the budget done on the 28th, we can actually have a public hearing at that time if it's on the schedule. If it's on the agenda.
But no one will likely have had even a chance to see it.
Okay, well, you can have it further. It doesn't have to be the 5th, right?
We get it done, then we can have the public hearing.
So no COLA?
We don't have any numbers.
Yeah, we've got.
Okay.
Do we have any obligation to a yearly dollar?
Like, they're getting 23%.
I don't know. I just wanted to know.
This budget's gonna be hard, it's gonna be hard on the library, it's gonna be hard on all the employees, they're gonna say, you don't value us, but what are we gonna do?
Well, there won't be any jobs if we can't figure something out.
That's just it. You know, if you want to give people raises, someone's gonna lose a job.
Yep.
Or someone's gonna lose a position.
It'd be like social security, you give a rate, you give it away with that.
Give them a raise, then take it back. Pay for their course.
Yeah, that would be.
If that's not, if you guys want to propose, bring it to the table and they'll just.
She suggested the idea of raising the deductible and then creating a pool. The question I go is that pool less expensive than
Well, see, that's-
if it is, that seems like a no-brainer.
wait. Alright.
No, I understand that. I'm talking about a pool for deductibles
For employees.
to help with the employee deductible.
But unless you get the information from the insurance company in regards to the different tiers, how much you can save, you don't know.
Well, I mean, it seems like we should be able to get that with a couple phone calls, right?
But, you know, and then something else to do is what some of the other agencies have done, and I know what's the state of Oregon, Dutchess County, Coos Bay, North Bend. I know for a fact that what they did is they put insuring the family, they gave, you have $1,100, that's all we're gonna give you. Anything over that, 1,000 out of your pocket if you want to insure your kids, your spouse or something, you can. And these are discussions that we have to bring, the council has to bring to the employees and have a meeting and let them decide.
When I worked at the hospital, the hospital said, we have this amount of money to pay for your insurance. And the USCW had different tiers for the employee, spouse, employee with children, employee with spouse and children. So, so depending on what you wanted, they would give you this amount and then you paid this amount. Or usually if it's, they would pay enough probably for the employee. So again, if you have a spouse who has insurance, then maybe you just get insurance, so it's, but the employee had a choice as to which one they wanted.
And I do know, and this is important for employees to know that when Andrew was here, he said that we were so fortunate to get Rich, was it Rich? Rich.
Barry Higgins.
Yeah, from Coos Bay, and he was taking a pay cut to come to us. And I said, no, it wasn't, because he now had to pay his own insurance and hers. And I said, isn't that correct, Andrew? And he said, yeah. So they are getting more money in their pocket with not paying the taxes. So that's why people,
That's why we worked for less.
that's right. And so to say, well, we had Melissa and stuff saying that, well, I want to make people's wages compatible. They never factored anything. Tax rate.
So I keep hearing all this stuff, and, the city managers we've had in the past, they will not look into this kind of stuff, so.
Because of the
is
tax
that,
on-
pardon?
it affects.
So that leaves on us.
Yeah.
to Say, wait, somebody needs to raise the information real. Committee and to the council. So that, that's why I made a call I did. And I wanted to know.
To be honest, you call the insurance company, you say, could you send me information on your tiers? That's it. All you have to do.
And if the council, when we come back and stuff, if the council,
In other words, you keep
Alright.
talking about solutions, but never.
but the council has to authorize somebody.
Yeah. Wait,
Well,
I'll do it.
no, I mean, yeah, but how much weight I offered to do it, Linda's offered to do it,
Keep bringing information is not making any decisions.
but they don't even want you to do it, because what right do you have to call them if you have?
This is all through.
Been there, done
CIS, Yes.
Oh,
Yes, absolutely, insurance through with CIS. Yeah, finally, after 8 years.
Well, that's why you guys are having such a great budget meeting.
Take your speaker, not your name. Adjourn. Before I get violent. Okay. I have a very. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.